The Bible is a long read that few people probably manage to get all the way through and retain much of. But if there's one thing from their Bibles that Christians really ought to know, it's Jesus. Not all Christians treat the Bible as the infallible Word of God, but to call yourself a Christian usually means you follow the teachings of Jesus. With that said, let's play a little quiz game called What Did Jesus Say? First up, did Jesus say he would destroy the Jerusalem temple and rebuild it again in 3 days? If you said yes, you are incorrect. Well, at least according to Mark's Gospel. In Mark 14:57-58, we read, "Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, 'I will destroy this man-made temple, and in 3 days will build another, not made by man.'" But according to John's Gospel, you would be correct, for Jesus delivers precisely this false testimony in John 2:19. What did Jesus say? Next, did Jesus say he will judge people? If you answered yes, you are wrong. Or that's what is indicated by John 8:15, where Jesus says, "You judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one." And John 12:47, where he says, "I did not come to judge the world, but to save it." However, John 9:39 has Jesus plainly stating that it was for judgment that he came into the world. What did Jesus say? For the third question, where did Jesus tell his disciples to go after his resurrection? If you guessed Galilee, then you are mistaken. That's what Acts and Luke tell us anyhow, with Jesus instructing his followers to remain in Jerusalem. But Matthew and Mark do have Jesus telling his disciples to go wait for him in Galilee. Apologists like to argue that immediately after the resurrection, Jesus did command his disciples to go to Galilee, and later on, before his ascension at a separate time, he commanded them to stay in Jerusalem. However, it's interesting to note that Matthew and Mark both end with no discussion of an ascension whatsoever, and Luke and Acts don't mention Jesus ever telling his disciples to go to Galilee after the resurrection. What did Jesus say? Lastly, did Jesus say that his own testimony about himself would be valid? If you think that he did, then you are not right. According to John 5:31, Jesus says that if I testify about myself, my testimony is not valid. Though just a couple of chapters later, in John 8:14, Jesus says, "Even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid." I guess for Jesus, anything truly goes, even contradictions.
Crisis, a cry of despair.